Hello, I'm a woman in my mid-30s, and I'm sharing my story. When I was younger, I used to be an unknown theater actress. Actor Mao, I'm living as an ordinary housewife, raising a child with my husband who loves me dearly, and spending my days very happily before I became a mother. I had many ups and downs, so I want to tell you about that story. When my husband and I were preparing for our wedding, I did not know that his father was a prominent local figure. The reason I didn't know was because he was such a frugal person. He was so modest that he never bought even one expensive shirt or a pair of shoes. He saved every penny and invested in places that needed it. He mainly spent his money on his longtime dream of studying to become a producer of theater plays and helping other younger actors who had no money. He and I met as an actress and a producer, fell in love, and promised to get married. Until the two families met for the first time. I still did not know anything about my in-laws' wealth. Like father, like son, my father-in-law was also a very modest person. By the time we had finished preparing for our wedding, my father-in-law brought up something totally unexpected, which made me find out that my in-laws were very wealthy. My father-in-law asked me, "Your dream is to become an actress, is that right?" "Father, it's my dream to become a theater actress." It seems I've done something right in my past life that I have some money. Since now we're getting a new member in our family, and I want to support the dreams of the new family member and my son. I am thinking about distributing the inheritance early. I beg your pardon? If I give you guys 2 commercial buildings or so, wouldn't it be enough to go after your dreams for both of you? Oh, Father, we never thought of such a great fortune, even if I'm the one who brought it up first. I'm grateful, but we'll work ourselves toward reaching our goals. We're still young. If it gets to be really hard, we'll ask you. If you want to give us a wedding gift, please buy us just 1 refrigerator. I'm also very interested in food. For instance, I didn't even want to get a refrigerator, but I couldn't go that far and reject him altogether. I could feel it in the kind eyes of my father-in-law looking at me. He wants to help us so much, so it could be rude to refuse flatly the elder's kind offer. Well, my father-in-law agreed to give us a refrigerator as a gift. He also suggested starting our newlywed life in the building that was in his name. We pondered for a while, then decided to accept his offer. We told him that we would pay the monthly rent. After our wedding was over, we set up our newlywed home at my father-in-law's building. My husband's parents lived on the upper floor, and right below was our newlywed home. A few of my friends told me that it was better to have the in-laws further away from us since they experienced very harsh treatment from their in-laws. But such things that my friends worried about did not occur. My father-in-law was such a wonderful person, and my husband was the only son. I didn't have any sister-in-law to pester me on behalf of my husband's parents. After getting married, we got along well, and I was very happy. That was for a while, anyway. One day, my husband and I were just starting to set up plans for having a baby. There was a reason why my father-in-law was in a hurry to distribute his properties to my husband and me in advance. My father-in-law was suffering from a grave illness, which he hid from his family. As his daughter-in-law, I felt guilty for not noticing his illness. He was eventually admitted to a hospital, and he began preparing himself for the ending of his life. Everyone has their own time to go. From the looks of it, I don't think I have much time left. How can I help you focus on your treatment comfortably? How about learning building management and everything in advance? The properties are way too spread out and too many for me to handle them alone, anyway. Don't say that. You'll be up and about soon. It's a request as a parent. Please, don't refuse me. That day, my husband and I promised to take care of our father's properties. At that time, I absolutely did not have any greed over the inheritance. We just wanted to take off the worries from our father and put his mind more at ease so that he could concentrate on his treatment. Because there were many of my father-in-law's buildings, and they were spread out over a very large area. My husband and I got help from our mother-in-law to take over. However, we shouldn't have done that. When that happened, my mother-in-law, who's quiet all this time, revealed her true nature. She pretended to be handing over the properties to us, but started intervening in our property management. My mother-in-law's behavior was tyrannical. Just behind our backs, she secretly approached the tenants and raised the rent by more than double and billed them regularly. She forged a contract with less rental money, and she pocketed the difference on the actual forced hire rent from the new tenants. It was a kind of tax evasion. The amount that she illegally obtained amounted to more than $100,000, so I couldn't just turn a blind eye. So, I told the truth to my father-in-law. He let out a big sigh and said, I guess this is why there's a saying that a person should not be chosen, thinking she will change. That's what do you mean? At the onset, she was a very greedy person. She was very rude to people and was a heavily wasteful spender. She didn't seem like that at all. She was like that when she was younger. Version statement, I thought she had improved as she got older. At first, I guess she was just waiting for me to become old and weak. Oh, that's why you were trying to distribute the inheritance early. However, how did you meet your wife? It seems that you're not that compatible. During our days, it was a trend for the marriage to be decided between the families. I met her then. At the request of my father-in-law, my husband and I tried to undo my mother-in-law's wrongdoing. We met and apologized to the tenants who were threatened with raised rents. With the tenants who were forced to sign the illegal rental contract. We replaced it with a legal one and returned the full amount that they were practically forced out of them. Of course, we took care of the tax issues properly as well. While doing that, we had frequent frictions with my mother-in-law, but we did not care. It was important for us to protect the moral and business values that my father had kept for his whole life, and for my husband and me to inherit those values. On the other hand, my husband and I became more diligent about having our baby. We wanted to give a chance for our father-in-law to hold his lovely grandchild in his arms before he passed away. However, getting pregnant wasn't easy to just happen because we wanted it. It's the day that we reported to my father-in-law the news, despite our conflicts with our mother, that we had righted all the wrongs done by her. My father-in-law passed away. My father-in-law said that he wanted to talk with just two of us just before he took his last breath. I held his hands tightly because I regretted not being able to have him hold his lovely grandchild in his arms. He whispered, "Darling, please listen. Please say it, whatever you want to say." After the funeral, my husband and I weren't even given any time to feel the vacancy left by my father-in-law, though it was due to my mother-in-law's actions trying to take over her husband's inheritance. As soon as the funeral was over, my mother-in-law started to act like a wealthy widower, as if to show it off to us. And she bought an expensive foreign car, and her closets were overflowing with branded items. Of course, all the money she spent was the money left by her husband. My husband and I had to stop her. It wasn't because we were interested in the money, or that we were against her spending it. It was because she treated other people who did not have money as much as her very rudely, just because she had money. The traditional as I watched her, I thought, has the US revived a caste system like India? Because she wielded such tyranny. She treated her chauffeur with such disrespect that it seemed she acted almost exactly like the mean witch that could be on the national news. I guess she's learned how to torment people by watching the news or dramas. She still bullied the tenants. There was even a rumor that she slapped the tenant. Of course my husband and I wouldn't put up with it. Stop it. You should be ashamed if you think about your husband. You sure talk very strangely. Hey, I spend my own money, so what's it to you? It's not at all a problem to spend money on your own. It's a problem because you're running around treating people very rude just because you have a lot of money. How dare you try to discipline me? I'm your mother-in-law. Honestly, it's not that your husband didn't spend enough money on you. You enjoyed your life very much with anything you wished for when your husband was alive. I never had anything to enjoy, she said. What do you mean? Is it because the tenants are not raising the rent, so you feel you need to be compensated by slapping the tenants around? For you, where did you hear about that? Are you following me around these days? I don't have to follow you, and I can still hear about it. If the tenants had not been terrified, would they have even talked to me? It was like this every time, no matter how much my husband... And I tried to tell her to do the right thing. My mother-in-law did not bat an eye. Even if I tried to find the people who were harmed by her, and give an apology and compensation for the damages, after 2 days at the most, my mother-in-law would act out again. We didn't know what to do. We promised my father-in-law that we could take care of it and try to deal with it. But the reality was, we could only do our best by merely trying to correct it after the fact. That very day, we received a piece of unexpected good news. My father-in-law's will was released late after going through several legal procedures. The content of the will was concise and clear. First, half of the property was to be inherited by my husband and me. Second, the remaining 45 will be inherited by our children, who are his grandchildren. Third, the remaining 5 was to his wife. And at that moment, I thought, as expected, it was father after all. All taxes related to inheritance were prepared for the payment when my father-in-law was alive. The will was delivered late due to the processing of the taxes, And as expected, the problem was my mother-in-law. Are you happy now that you're taking all my money? Don't you really know why your husband did this? I know. Has such a sly, foxy woman like you must have fooled your father-in-law into doing it. I've never done anything like that. And you have missed the whole point, haven't you? How dare you talk back? Your husband was worried about your behavior. You're doing horrible things these days. That's why there's nothing to complain about, Mother. It's your own fault. You're causing trouble. Let's wait and see, because I don't want to waste my money on you, so I won't let it go on like this. I have to say it correctly. It's not your money anymore. To be honest about inheriting my father-in-law's money, I wasn't affected. Rather, it was a little burdensome. The image of the noble's obligation that my father-in-law showed us was not something that my husband and I could easily inherit. My concern for my mother-in-law was enormous. What actions will she take to extort our inheritance? I wondered. Not surprisingly, my mother-in-law went in and out of her lawyer's office nearly every day. It was obvious, as she was scheming, how could she get her hands on her inheritance? And it seemed that she finally found a way. All of a sudden, my mother-in-law turned into a benevolent mother. She never even talked about money and imitated her husband's kind personality. But I saw right through her. It was meant to reassure my husband and me. However, I wasn't deceived, but my mother-in-law did her second scheme without knowing I wasn't deceived. Is your relationship okay? Why haven't I heard of a child yet? No problem. Pregnancy will happen naturally. Don't just say it and take some of these and feed it to your husband. What is this? It's good for men. That day, my mother-in-law told me to feed my husband, and she gave me some barley powder. She gave me spinach the next day. She also gave me some beans and herbs the next day. She even said that one day she was worried that my husband, tired from producing a play, might drive when he was drowsy, and gave him a bunch of chocolate and coffee. They were the food well known to be bad for men's fertility. The fact was that they absolutely had nothing to do with men's fertility. How did I know? Even though I was an unknown theater actress, I majored in food nutrition. Because we knew that those things were not harmful to men's fertility, we ate all the food that his mother gave us. The food was very nutritious, so my husband and I became healthier by the day, and with the appropriate amount of chocolate and caffeine intake, we spent the days with moderate endorphins. My mother-in-law didn't even know that, and she kept delivering good ingredients. It was with the obvious reason, and even my husband knew it all. He told me, every time I see you, I'm dying of embarrassment. Really, why, Mom? This is to prevent your pregnancy. She's trying to feed us with a lot of food that's known to be bad for our fertility. It's okay if they don't harm us. I said, just do because she is so pathetic. What's money that she's doing this to her own son, daughter-in-law, and even to her future grandchildren? Leave it alone. She has no more power to try to wield it, even if she wants to be a tyrant with money. Even if she does, you and I won't put up with her, will we? My mother-in-law was trying to prevent me from getting pregnant and trying to steal half of the inheritance, which her husband had reserved for his future grandchildren. If we didn't give birth, half of the inheritance would belong to my mother-in-law, my father-in-law's wife. That's why she brought all the foods that were misunderstood as bad for men's fertility to my husband and fed them. It wasn't long before my mother-in-law realized that her scheme wasn't working. After a few days of being very impatient, she crashed into our newlyweds' bedroom late at night. Mother, we are newlyweds. I don't care whether you are newlyweds or not. I'm too scared, so I can't take it anymore. What? You two try to spend the night alone without a husband. It's dark and quiet, and do you know how scary that is? Mother, you aren't even a child. Be quiet and starting today. I will sleep with my son. If you're really uncomfortable, go to another room and sleep alone. So, I lost my space next to my husband, to my mother-in-law. What in the world? It was unbelievable and absurd that nothing came out of my mouth. How blind she was to the grief for an inheritance, as it was so obvious that she was trying to stop us from having a baby. I thought we couldn't put up with her, and my husband and I changed the passkey on the front door as soon as the daylight broke. Nevertheless, the next night, my mother-in-law opened the door to our house with the help of a locksmith. My husband and I, who were listening to the sound in the house, made eye contact for a moment and started acting without anyone talking first. As soon as my mother-in-law entered our house, I shouted, "A thief!" I let out all kinds of screams. I just threw all kinds of stuff at my mother-in-law. Of course, those things were like pillows and cushions, but in the meanwhile, I called the police. My mother-in-law was perplexed. I was perplexed by the sudden situation, and soon the police arrived. My mother-in-law was taken into custody by the police on breaking and entering charges. It was possible because the inheritance was not fully executed, and my husband and I were the tenants of the building in the name of our deceased father-in-law. Aside from her being my mother-in-law or not, the charges of breaking and entering into the tenant's house were cleared. My mother-in-law underwent a brief investigation, and she was let out with a reprimand and on her own recognizance. But she couldn't come straight out of the police station. At the same time, the police had just started an investigation into the complaints of the tenants about my mother-in-law's abuses. I talked to my mother-in-law, who spent the whole night answering for all the accusations. It seems that the tenants are very angry. How dare they when they are just impoverished flats? You shouldn't say things like that in front of us. We were the ones who helped them. What? Are you crazy? How can you do this without being crazy? I had to protect the good name that my father-in-law built up all his life. We also wanted you to at least live like a human being, because that's our obligation as your children. So what? The terms of the tenants' agreement are simple. Just apologize, then everything can go smoothly. And this is my last request as your daughter-in-law. You make me laugh. Let them go to court. How could people with money go down? There's no such law. If so, then, as your daughter-in-law, I must abide by my father-in-law's last will. As of today, you are no longer our parent. You must even leave the house where you live now. My mother-in-law really did everything she could to protest, but my husband and I turned from her coldly, whether she liked it or not. After the lawsuit, my mother-in-law had to pay all the damages in the name of the tenants' complaints and accusations. She blew all her illegally gotten money that she had stashed away from her husband and us. All the tenants who had suffered from my mother-in-law came to visit my husband and me to say thanks. And as my mother-in-law got kicked out of her house, we didn't see her anymore, so we thought the case was closed. However, it was around the time when my husband and I were finally able to conceive. I heard the news of my mother-in-law, who had been quiet for a while. As if she had not yet fixed her exorbitant spending habit, she was staying in an expensive hotel room for a long time, and she was looking for all the shamans who were known for being effective. My mother-in-law was trying to do something by spending tens of thousands of dollars, but she was in a situation where the shamans were rejecting her. Considering that she was being rejected, it seemed like she was ordering a kind of illegal voodoo. Illegal voodoo curse. That was the gist of the news. My husband and I felt something ominous, so we inquired about the shaman that my mother-in-law had met and went to visit her. There, we heard a shocking story. Your mother-in-law? That was a very bad person. Was it a real curse? Of course it was the curse. The curse is so bad that it would even affect me badly if I went ahead with it. What kind was it? Are you pregnant? As you can see, she wants me to put a voodoo curse to cause you a miscarriage of your baby. Not only that, she wants me to curse you so that you and your husband will become infertile. How could she wish for my miscarriage and infertility? Our anger soared. It was her bloodline even. And before being related, it was something that no human should ever wish on them, whether the curse actually worked or not. Of course, my husband and I didn't even believe it. Still, it wasn't that. My husband and I became so furious that we came up with a plan to protect our family. We decided to shock my mother-in-law so much that we would abide by my father-in-law's wish to give his inheritance to us and to our children, including his wish to hardly leave any of his inheritance to my mother-in-law. After a while, there was a report of a certain ceremony being held in the cemetery where my father-in-law was buried. It was, of course, my mother-in-law who ordered the voodoo ceremony and the various props necessary for the cursing ceremony all arrive. The shaman started the curse with a strange dialect. Was it a curse word for my husband and me to have the miscarriage and infertility? No, the shaman was just repeating the words about how to cook pasta in Jamaican words. The story was like this. The very day we found out that my mother-in-law was planning a voodoo cursing ceremony for my miscarriage and our infertility, my husband and I met an actress from Jamaica who's in my husband's playhouse. Then we told her the whole story. Wow, your mother-in-law is really trash. She's also a woman, but how could she? Anyway, how can I help you? Let's make a fake ceremony together with the actors. I want you to take over the role of a shaman. And you can speak Jamaican well, so pretend to be cursing, but just not speaking any bad words. And just act. She won't know that it's Jamaican anyways. And the highlight is, at my mother-in-law's voodoo cursing ceremony, the moment the actress and the fake shaman act being done by whom my husband and I cast was reaching the highlight, I stepped out from waiting right in front of my mother-in-law. When my mother-in-law saw me, she seemed flustered for a moment, but soon her whole face was filled with joy. She was probably thinking, the curse worked. She will have a miscarriage soon, and then the grandchild's money will be mine. But it was no wonder she would think that because I already looked like a person who lost her wits. After all, wasn't I an actress? My pretending to be crazy was amazing. After letting my mother-in-law enjoy the moment, I started to act in order to reprimand my mother-in-law. You rotten bitch! Was money that great? My mother-in-law became bewildered and asked the fake shaman what was going on. When the fake shaman explained she seemed to have been possessed by her husband, she immediately froze. Money was so good that even you could care less about the parents and the children, you bitch. Honey, it's not like that. Listen to me for a moment. I was watching everything, so what's needed to talk about? Let's go. Let's go to the underworld with me to be punished. What sin are you saying I committed, really? The sin of your trying to kill my grandchild? And, as if that wasn't enough, the sin of trying to curse our son and our daughter-in-law. Do you still know nothing? Come on, come with me. At that moment, the foundation, which was piled up with full of gadgets of voodoo dolls, crashed. It was directed by my husband, who was the theater director. But my mother-in-law's face, unaware of that fact, became white with fear. That was the time. I gave a nasty look at the fake shaman brutally, and the fake shaman pretended to be suffocating and gasped and gave a realistic performance. Actually, my mother-in-law, terrified of her, fell on her knees in front of me and began to beg for my forgiveness. I decided that this was enough and decided to end the situation. You're a fool. Don't ever go near your son and daughter-in-law again. Don't be greedy for money and don't even think about doing anything unkind. Shouldn't even try to harm others. It was wrong. I won't do it again. Please, just save me. Don't forget today's event for the rest of your life. I won't let it pass the next time if you act that bad again. After I finished my words, I pretended to be released from being possessed and fainted. Then my mother-in-law just ran away from there for her life. The fake voodoo ceremony was over. As promised, my husband and I donated all of the tens of thousands of dollars that my mother-in-law paid her fake shaman to the theater company. It was to be spent for those actors who were in difficult circumstances, but still never lost their dreams and worked hard. In that donation, my husband and I also added our donation that we had prepared. Whenever my mother-in-law comes to see us to talk about money, I tell her just one word to stop her. Speak well, Father is standing behind you now. My husband and I regained peace and gave birth to a healthy and lovely child. And I promised my father-in-law in heaven, I will become a person who tries to look widely around for anyone in difficulties. When our child grows up to some extent, I will try again toward my dream of becoming an actress, even if to repay my father-in-law's kindness to help me reach my dream. His teaching that a person must care about one another will be kept close to my heart, and I will live accordingly. Thanks for listening to the long story. Everyone who listened, please have a nice day. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscription is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day.